mute themselves as a general rule and then pop in as needed rather than allowing the multitude of voices at the same time to aid in our broadcast and recorded version. I'm hearing a thump, 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 for example, on somebody's end.
I think it's the cat's tail.
No, it could be. It might be me also. I'm looking for I forget the shortcut for muting. What's the keyboard shortcut? I can't get to it, and I was looking for it. It's probably me thumping my keyboard trying to find it.
Do you recall that, Dick? What the mute
keyboard
button
key is? Yeah, I know there is one. I just don't have the list in front of me. There's a keyboard shortcut for it. There's a toggle for all of this thing, all these things. Let me try this. There. Am I muted?
Nope.
Oh, I don't know what that did then. Okay.
While you look, why don't you let me mute you?
Why don't you do that? Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead and mute me, and I can raise my hand.
M is used to mute.
M. There you go.
And there's also an icon for it in the controls.
Right. We're looking at accessibility a bit during this meeting. And for Dave, that's an important issue to use keyboard controls. Okay, I'm sharing the multi-screen here. So let me go back to my Firefox, where we will get into a brief comment about mainframes. This is just an article that I came across, and I'm not going to spend a long time on this. We are, by the way, in our live recorded session at the moment and have covered a good deal before the meeting got started. Before the meeting's recording got started. You can read through the links of the FOSS news to catch up. We will not repeat that for the recorded version. Okay. Mainframe still in use is about the reality that a whole bunch of IBM computers are still out there doing the work of banking and other financial transactions. They're pretty much exclusively involved in just the biggest corporations who have need of those COBOL style programs that were perfect for business. And one of our members was a programmer for, I believe, AT&T for a long time, and Verizon, which pardon? I'm hearing background voices, but maybe it's.
I'll go. Did you want to be? Yeah, I just turned it on. Did you want? I'm getting reverbs from your.
There appears to be some mute issue needed again. We're getting crosstalk between a couple of computers.
Trying again. Nope.
The value of headsets, I think, is in this situation.
Hi. Nope. Oh.
I think we found the culprit. Who was that?
Okay. Nope.
Is your mic on?
Off. On.
Oh, it is.
Oh, okay. Okay, no, Algot, did you want to be sharing your screen? Because you're not.
I'm not sharing my screen.
Well, that's interesting. It's
I
being
say
shared on Dick's computer and not mine.
click there.
It says I am at the moment.
I'm
Glance,
fair.
All set.
glance over at Dick's while you ask your question.
I already asked it, and now
Oh.
we fixed it. So
Oh,
thanks.
okay. Okay. Well, Bruce Borland is the member who was the one I was trying to mention. He does not join us in these live sessions, but I think he does the recordings. I just wanted to mention that he would be a person to give a comment on this if he were here, and we miss his presence. The other FOSS history is really not so much about FOSS itself as about history of computing and the death of formats. We have a lot of disk formats that have disappeared, the 8-inch floppy and the majority of paper tape reels and the giant platters that were involved with the mainframes, which means more in the long run that you have to keep updating your equipment. And it turns out that software is the same sort of mash of working current stuff and old formatted material being inaccessible. Adobe Flash was a big deal in the earlier days of the internet, when people wanted to do the things that we can now do just in our browsers. If you wanted to see animated film, you basically had to use Adobe Flash Player and the FLV video. And apparently someone has made a new piece of software that's written in the language Rust to allow people to use the old Flash player to do the things it was meant to do. I'm not sure whether that's a big deal to most people, but there are, I'm sure, a lot of archived Flash videos that would otherwise be inaccessible to people without this kind of effort. And it's nice to see that people do that kind of work. So if you're interested in Adobe Flash Player and FLV video, you might want to look into the Ruffle program. Hot software that is more current is represented here by 3 different tools or 3 different items. Bluetooth control application called Overscribed is in its first release, which may not be of interest to anybody because we do like to have stable software, but it is for controlling things that are Bluetooth. And for this group, I probably don't have to explain Bluetooth in any detail. It is a near field Wi-Fi kind of thing for those who didn't know. And this Overscribe will allow you to deal with controlling those things that have Bluetooth access available to. Another piece of big news is the release of Pipewire. This is the first official version, though it has been developed for quite a bit of time and represents, according to this quote, the next evolution of audio handling for Linux, taking the best of both the professional audio, Jack is the name of that, and desktop audio servers known as Pulse Audio, and linking them into a single, seamless, powerful new system. Now, I'm still using Pulse Audio because I'm on a flavor of Ubuntu and I don't do professional audio with Jack, but it sounds like this is a well-known and desirable advance to combine those two into one audio system. Does anybody have further information because they are audio people?
Got me in, or-
Here we are. Am I in? Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think Fedora, the current Fedora has, replaced Pulse with Pipewire. Maybe not replaced, but add addition to it. And also, I think Debian Trixie has an available package you can install that will move everything to Pipewire. All your audio will be Pipewire if you install this Pipewire audio meta package for Debian in the state Trixie, the next testing release. And isn't Ubuntu going to be all Pipewire as of the next LTS?
I have not read that, but
Okay.
I'm kind of hoping that we get some more information about it by next meeting, so we have a better piece of information to work for, because audio systems on the Linux desktop have been one of the bugaboos from the beginning, and maybe this will solve some of those problems where the Bluetooth and other things will be easier to handle.
As far as Ubuntu goes, the 2404 does not appear to be moving over to Pipewire. They're still having some issues getting it fully integrated into Ubuntu.
Thank you, Bob. But it sounds as if we are headed in that direction rather than branching so that everybody does something different. We're pulling on various oars of the boat to head in that direction. And for those who are interested in learning some new programming language, this next hot software item is perhaps of interest. It is known as exorcism. It's not exorcism, but exercise, I think, is the intent of the term. It provides a chance to do online exercises, and I have not used it because I am not a programmer per se and have enough trouble with my current number of activities. But they list a whole bunch of languages here on the front page: Python, JavaScript, Java for those who are still working with that, C, C++, C#, Rust, woo, on and on and on. So if you want to learn, there is a free access to this. You do have to sign up, which means, of course, they get your contact information, and for some that is a problem. This is not an anonymous activity. They probably want to know what your interests are so that they can link you to the proper recommended tools. But if anybody explores this and is interested in learning about a new programming language or expanding their knowledge of a current one, this might be of interest to you. And now, hot hardware. I have a little trouble with hot hardware because I don't typically purchase all that many items to promote them as Dick and Joe were able to do in the past. So I'm kind of pointing to these things from the outside in and just letting you explore them on your own rather than giving you particular recommendations about things. Nonetheless, the first item about the Apple Thunderbolt wire connection is a very complete video to explain why $130 might not be such a crazy price for what amounts to the same job as a USB-C, the C version, small and flippable. The Thunderbolt cable is built with two computers, one at each end, that do a huge amount of work. And this fairly interesting video would be worth watching on your own. Do not think it's worth showing here during the meeting, but I recommend that you take a look at that. Anybody know any more about that? And since we're not Apple users in general, not a big deal. Okay. Astrophotography with the Raspberry Pi. I think I will jump to that article, which is one of the multitude of Autodesk Instructables that I subscribe to the weekly emails about. This is a person who has developed both a 3D printed Pi Lomar box, along with all the electronics to make a reasonable astrophotography tool that's not all that expensive to do, and builds are completely explained here in this article. And if you have any interest in astronomy and or the Raspberry Pi, this is a fascinating article to read in its entirety. It's a very long but very informative hobby project that this person has spent 2 years developing. It's not as quick as some of the projects that are on this good source. The Instructables tend to be a good source of information about people doing neat things, particularly with 3D printing. And the Raspberry Pi, which is one of those tools that some have a great interest in. This is a very interesting Apple phone article. I want you to look very, 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 very carefully at this image, which was taken by an Apple of a woman buying a gown for her wedding. If you can see it, let me see if I can expand it slightly here so that we get into this mirror image, her from behind, and this mirror image. If you can see those well enough on your screen, you'll notice that her arms are not in the same positions. And that's because Apple's phone takes a series of quick images every time it takes a snapshot. And then it combines them, picking the best pieces that it thinks in your favor are desirable. So you don't really do snapshots anymore. You do these cluster of images that are then artificially intelligenced to produce what the people in Apple think is the best choice. And I believe there's a phone ad on TV that is for the Google phone that talks about your ability to choose from the best versions of a person's face so that they're not squinting or closing their eyes at the time of the photo. It will artificially swap your head out so the best picture is shown. The Pixel is the name of the Google phone, not an Apple. But those two combine to be a kind of interesting, if not frightening, development. Anybody have comments about that? Okay. What the next link talks
Am I,
about.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. Comments. Two comments, actually. First comment, I'm using a very inexpensive smartphone, Motorola Moto G Pure. It came with a 1-year connection and service, and the whole thing cost $100. And it takes fine, sharp pictures used with our free Linux tools. I like open camera, and I can set it to take HDR pictures. And what it does is it freezes the image briefly when you take a photo in that mode and reads it 3 different ways. Then later, they can be reconstituted totally automatically, or you can go in and fiddle. It's not quite the same, but the first half of it is. Takes a bunch of images, but instead of using it to do different things, it uses the 3 of them to add up to a sharper, better dynamic balance, better color image. Does all kinds of things between the 3 different
That's what the
treatments
phone
of the
does.
same one exposure. That's interesting too. Second thing I wanted to, and I don't think it depends on the camera. I think any new smartphone and the free open camera download will do it. Second thing I wanted to mention is quick, and it has to fit in right here. This woman's husband died, and she had to prepare for the funeral. And she talked to the undertaker and said, unfortunately, he was wearing terribly sloppy clothes when he died, and we don't know what to do about it. They can't seem to be removed at this time, and it'll be kind of embarrassing. The undertaker says, don't worry. At the funeral, her husband was lying there in a casket in a beautiful suit and looking fine.
And that fit
And-
perfectly.
And the suit was a perfect fit. And afterwards, she said, that was wonderful. Thank you. But how did you get the suit to fit so well? The undertaker said it was simple. We simply switched heads, which was your punchline a minute ago. It's not just computer stuff, it spreads elsewhere.
My goodness. I'm having a tough time not imagining that.
That goes in the black humor section.
Absolutely. The next item, driverless printing, is a piece that again talks about formats. This is the original link on Mastodon that I was able to where I was able to hear about this, the driverless printing is a particularly powerful thing when you remember how many old printers didn't work with Linux at all. And it turns out that author of Cups, which is one of the open source tools for printing, did the principal design for a type of driverless printing called the IPP system. And it is something that the Brother computer has completely gone to, so that you don't have to worry about finding the driver for any particular Brother printer. You can just hook your computer with the USB cable to your new printer, and the system will figure out what the proper connection software needs to be and do it all on its own. And I would love it if all printers did this, but I'm not positive that that's going to happen. I personally currently own a Brother printer and experienced this exact result, even though my printer is networked rather than being connected directly by USB. I plugged in the printer to the network, asked to make a connection to the IP address of the printer on my network, and zang, no drivers. I could just print. Totally powerful technology. And it's neat that this kind of work is being done because of open source and free software. This is a direct result of the work that free software people have done over the years. And it's not a proprietary feature anymore. And I love it. Dell laptops are more or less proprietary, but they've actually been very happy to be a Linux pioneer for a company that mostly is a Windows kind of company. And if you're interested in reading about this, the Dell XPS 13 is a very, very highly respected, developer-focused, very expensive laptop. And this would be an article to read further about how Linux got connected with them. Okay. This next one is both hardware and software related. The FCC, as it took back the TV frequencies of broadcast television, has opened up part of that spectrum to allow for very, very fast wireless communications. I'm not going to try to describe exactly what's going on. Please follow the link on your own so that we don't keep talking about every item for 25 minutes. And then negative hot hardware is that the Itanium 64-bit CPU has been dropped from Linux support. Not that that's going to bother most people. We don't normally run that kind of CPU in our personal computers anyway. This was mostly a server issue, I believe. Our next section on the agenda is all about hardware and software accessibility. This was particularly an issue when I thought of our member Dave, who perhaps does use Braille from time to time, And they've come up with different ways to do this stuff, Braille particularly. The electromechanical process of producing Braille so that it is possible to do Braille signage and change the signs on buildings and doorways. I would recommend that you get a quick read through all five of these links. I'm going to have to update the BrailleBot link. But what I thought was the most interesting of these articles was this BrailleBot that is a trainer that for about $100 and a Raspberry Pi, you can learn how to do Braille because the little dots poke up as you practice the different letters of the alphabet. I am not a Braille reader, but I think it's important that software deals with the issue of reduced sight and reduced hearing. One of the articles here is about whether or not you, as a user, can run your entire application with a mouse, or excuse me, without a mouse, making it more easily accessible to those people who can't follow the pointer around a screen effectively. And one of the things I'd like to point out in this regard is that the email system that we often use, I use Thunderbird, as does Dick and I think a few others in our group. If you ask for a new message, you can tab between the to and the subject, but I don't know if there is an equivalent keyboard action that will get you to the CC field or the BCC.
Yeah, I think you can. Let's see. Do we have to expose them first? Somehow I forget. But I see them. I see them on mine. I must have done it at some point because I see them. I can tab through them.
I see on my screen something that I didn't see in an earlier version. I'm using Thunderbird in its current version.
I'm using 121.
And the earlier version of this did not have a tooltip. And now the tooltip says to get to the BCC field, hold down the Control, Shift, and B.
That works, yeah.
So I withdraw my complaint, but actually, this stuff moves so fast that no matter what we talk about one month, it may turn out to be fixed by the next month.
Yeah, Thunderbird has done a lot with accessibility in the past few iterations. For a long time, you couldn't move the columns around to the message list, and you couldn't sort by anything but chronological. Now you have access to all those options without a mouse. And
that, I think, is tremendous.
It's all exposed, finally.
Yay.
Yay. It took a bunch of complaining, lots of complaining, actually, as it always does, because nobody designs this stuff in. It's always an afterthought.
And I think it's important that we recognize that as users, because those of us who can see and can hear ignore the issue as it comes along for those with difficulties. And it's nice that somebody listens and it's better if we all ask, well, how accessible is your program when I use it? Is it something that others can use as well?
One other way to test, probably the best way to test, that's better than any automated validator, which those are out there. If you can't run your application without a mouse, it's not ready.
Perfect.
Yep.
I agree. I prefer, in many cases, to not use the mouse, because then I have to go from one corner to the other of the screen and things like that. And if I can do it with a keyboard, a key combination press, I find it much
more efficient. If you're a touch typist, especially, you don't have to take your hands off home row to fuss with a mouse. I would think it's better for a lot of people. Yeah. Now the problem is that sometimes these keyboard shortcuts are in there, but they're not discoverable easily.
Right.
Also worthy of note, many of the things we now accept as mainstream, which would include high contrast mode and talking to your devices, began as assistive technology.
Yeah, that's true. Dark mode, and yeah, I guess voice control did, right? I guess Siri probably was originally an adaptive device at Stanford or something. I don't know, but which reminds me, we need a good. Does anybody know of a good speech to text that'll run in GNU Linux systems, like for dictation?
I know I don't.
Okay, well, I gather from the silence that it's not. Nobody's looked into it. Fair enough. It's just that, I mean, I've come to now and then I use it on my smartphone. I'll dictate rather than fuss with a touch screen sometimes. That's all.
Okay, and a last item that really has less to do with computers than it does to the ham world, the amateur radio world. The next link talks about the plan. The FCC is attempting to increase the bandwidth for hams, which was a amount. You had limited ability to do communications because of bandwidth restrictions, and they're proposing to widen them and are looking for feedback. And I know a couple of our users are ham radio operators, including Dave. So that's why I dropped it in this section. This link goes to the plan document from the FCC. So if you are a ham or know someone who is a ham, the FCC is looking for comments. Whew. We're moving along. We're about halfway through our time. I think we may make it. I briefly want to just point out over here on the right, you may be able to see as my mouse pointer encounters the edge of the screen, it is seeing a large navigation bar. By large, I mean that it is not the standard navigation bar that is encountered here. This is Thunderbird, which uses the same technology as Firefox. This is the standard width of today's scroll bar. And it's just ridiculous to me that it is less than a millimeter wide on my screen. Even when I bump into it, it goes to about 3 millimeters. And I barely can see that with my reasonably good eyes. Firefox, and I imagine perhaps the Thunderbird as well, but I haven't experimented with that yet, does not use external controls for this. It's not a system control thing, but it is possible to set up the configuration of Firefox. And I've just switched to a screen showing the about : config screen, which warns that you can do huge damage to do changes in your configuration of Firefox. What I'm going to do is to go to widgets. Oh, wait a minute, not just widgets. Widget.nonnative, there it is. I have there we come. This screen, for those who are quick to read, has mostly unhighlighted items with a standard value for the non-native theme, always high contrast, of false. Bob was just mentioning the high contrast a moment ago. I don't have high contrast turned on for Firefox, but I do have down here a little bit further down the screen the non-native theme scroll bar size override. I have mine set to 25, and just next in the list, the non-native theme scroll bar style of 3, which makes a blunt style to the scroll bar. 25 is how wide the scroll bar looks as you see it. And I've widened mine from value of 0, which is the default values of Firefox, and I've changed the theme to be the blunt 3. And there's an article in the link to an explanation on a Reddit question, Reddit being a place where people post questions and get answers. I recommend that if you are having trouble seeing your scroll bars in Firefox, you take a look at this and try it for yourself. Anybody have questions before I leave these two? Excellent. Back to our agenda then. Oop. Here. Okay. Bob Primack has an extension of this same demo. So I'm going to let him take over.
Yes.
And I'll unshare so that you can perhaps demo.
I will be sharing.
All right.
Okay, I'm where I want to be. Now, what I will do is I will minimize what I'm sharing so that I can do the share. And I will be doing my entire screen. So initially you'll see everybody. There we are. Now, there is a more general thing you can do with your GTK theme. A warning. When you're using Wayland, you may not be using the GTK theme the same way. So this may not work under Wayland. It does work under anything that uses X11, which would be Unity and most of the, well, Mint Cinnamon works this way. I think Mate also. Okay, so if you have a GTK theme and it actually is used by your applications instead of the GNOME theme, which is the other thing you might have, and that's more complicated. There is something very simple you can do if you run into an issue. I'm going to make sure that I don't have this configured the way I want it. And I don't. I have, okay, later on we'll see exactly what this is. But right now, let's take a look at LibreOffice Calc. Natively, can you even see that scroll bar at the bottom? Anybody? That is what it is. It's about 2 pixels. And the problem is you could end up grabbing something else instead of the scroll bar, especially on the side. You could grab this and collapse your side panel. You could end up all the way over in your side panel. You can do all kinds of damages. So it really is important functionally to be able in a spreadsheet or similar detailed application to be able to really get those scroll bars. So what I found in an online source is that there is a neat little trick you can do using a cascading style sheet or a CSS, which is called gtk.css. And here's the native thing. It's about 4 pixels, and the border radius is about 4 pixels. And what I am going to do first is put gtk.css as it is. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it into my individual user's home directory. I show hidden so that I see the .config, and it will be .config for GTK 3.0. That's normally pretty empty, so you just put the style sheet in here. It takes immediate effect, but right now it's not doing anything because I don't have the numbers adjusted correctly. Let's open this up. You don't need to be root, just open it. And let's raise these to, let's say, 10 pixels. And I'm going to let the border radius go up to about 8, even though that doesn't have a whole lot of effect. And let's say the border, solid transparent. I don't think this has much of an effect, but again, I'm going to raise it proportionally. And then we'll just save this file. Now, you have to close LibreOffice or any application where you've done this and reopen it. Now, can you see the scroll bars? Of course you can. That's how you do it with GTK theme. And I will return you to your regular screen. We're back.
Thank you, Bob. For those who are troubled by these tool limitations, remember that they used to have bigger scroll bars, and they intentionally made them smaller because people wanted more real estate to be able to see more data. I don't know. I can't read the whole screen of data on a thing like LibreOffice Calc anyway. I have to focus on one cell at a time to really get a sense of what I'm reading. So I love that we do have methods in probably Libre software more than otherwise. We have methods that somebody could add if they knew about them. And that's the reason that we mentioned these kinds of issues in our meetings, hoping that some other people will see that the solution is FOSS. And there you go. Any other comments on this or similar issues? Okay, I'm going to reshare so that we can continue. And back to my screen there. Okay. Computer. How to fix the internet is a request to move away from big platforms. It's probably a pie in the sky kind of thing, but if you are aware, this site, our own site, is a hand-done site, and many people make their own websites. And excuse me for just a moment. Okay. That was my sister-in-law calling. Had to deal with that. I am here. There are plenty of people who want to see more of the old style of websites, meaning hand done and or done in a simpler way and not all shared on Twitter or Facebook. Or some people apparently think when they log into the computer that those are what the internet is. And that makes it a fact. If that's what you log into when you log into the computer, then that's what you see as the internet. It's like the old AOL CDs that used to be thrown into every magazine that existed. You could get free access to AOL Online. America Online was, I think, its original description. And that was, quote, the internet, filtered, but it was people's view of the internet. We briefly walked away from that, getting back to the original plan of making individual websites with information that could be linked back and forth. And there are plenty of people who don't like the current big platform drive, everything in the cloud, and nobody owns their own software. So this article is for you to read. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't, but that's your choice. I like doing our own websites and want to do it as much as I possibly can because that's the FOSS way, in my opinion. A Yahoo search deal was apparently instituted by Firefox, Mozilla, and it cost Firefox users, leaving more and more people to use the other browsers, meaning Google's browser, Chrome. We don't recommend Chrome in this user group. We do recognize Chromium, which is the tool I'm currently using here. This is my Chromium browser window that we're using Jitsi on. It's the open source support system for the commercial product that is known as Chrome. But more and more browsers are falling onto using Chromium as their base, leaving Firefox and others behind. And that's too bad because I think Mozilla, while it is not a perfect organization, does provide us with a useful tool in the form of Firefox. It's too bad when it becomes less popular by default. Okay, security, privacy, and freedom. I think most of these are from Ed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I added, yes, I added most of them.
Perhaps you want to take the steering wheel in this part of the meeting?
Well, they're just pretty much general, general information items. That, if you feel like skipping them, that's fine with me.
Okay. In other words, we recommend for those who have an interest in any of these that you actually click through and go to the links and read more about what is going on. But the big news that I'm happy to hear is on the Chrome, which was the browser I just mentioned from Google, is not going to proceed with the Web Integrity API because very many people apparently complained, not only organizations, but people, that it was a way to reduce the variety available on the web. It's not the same as HTTPS, secure web browsing. It's if you don't pass this test, you don't get to be on the internet. And that sounded very much like digital rights management or digital restrictions management, as others like to call it, in the web, which is supposed to be as open as it can possibly be. These guys, because of their huge presence in the web, felt that they ought to add a layer of security on top of the layers of security that exist already. I don't know that it was a bad intent, but it certainly was something that aroused the ire of a whole bunch of people. And the same thing here with the question of YouTube declaring war on ad blockers. Ad blockers, some people really use them. I just don't bother to listen to the ads when they go by.
I won't run a browser without uBlock Origin.
I don't particularly blame you. I'm just too lazy.
I'll go. What the issue is that if the ads were clean and free of malware, many of us would not have a problem with their presence. But because so many of them, ones that were sponsored by Google, supplied through Google, and posted at YouTube, so many of them did turn out to be malicious. There has to be some way of controlling them, managing them. Since Google doesn't screen them adequately, we use things like Ghostery, which is not an ad blocker. It is a different kind of privacy tool, and it is a security tool.
Yeah. Now I think that there was a time when Google was like putting a nag up there if you were running an ad blocker. They would, but then they changed the language of it. Now it says, we notice you're running an ad blocker. Please support your content creators another way. And then it goes away and you don't see ads anymore.
Nope, they're back to requiring you to turn it off.
I'll have to try. I was on there. Okay. I don't know what happened. I was on there today and it didn't.
Oh, well, maybe they changed it. Maybe they backed down. Just the way they did with Chrome Web Integrity.
Yeah, I was, like I said, you get the message the first time, I think. It says, we hope you're supporting your content providers another way since you're using an ad blocker. But then it lets you use the ad blocker. At least my experience is with uBlock Origin. Now, I don't know if Ghostery gets, more aggressive treatment. I don't know.
No, I would say Ghostery would get less aggressive.
I don't know.
Yeah, they may have changed very recently.
I think they did because I think they got lots of complaints.
There was a desktop.
Yes.
But then again, on YouTube, content creators make money through ad views. And there's no way to calculate that if you download a video and then play it later, and there's no way to calculate it if you skip the ads.
No, I think if you skip them, they still run, don't they? Like,
yes.
Doesn't their tracking still happen whether you skip it or not?
Oh, the content creators don't get monetary credit if you skip the ads.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
There is a way that at least the Chrome family of browsers can track that.
I'm sure.
And that's how they monetize it.
Yeah. So yeah, some people have other ways to get supported, like Patreon or whatever. But
yeah, that's
which is great. I think that's great. Yeah.
I like that better.
Yes, much. I'd much rather pay somebody's Patreon if I like their content enough.
All right. We have a final item in that sequence that isn't quite the same as the others. It's VS Studio, which is a Microsoft tool that is designed for programming simplicity. It integrates into GitHub in a way that allows people who are developing software and decide to use VS Studio to get a few more features for their development process. And that makes it attractive, of course. But what it does at the same time, if you read this article, it makes those who don't use VS Studio work at a little bit of a disadvantage. You don't get quite the same feature set. And here we are with Microsoft, famous for its embrace, extend, and extinguish game, doing it in the development of open source software, making me nervous that those people who work through GitHub as opposed to one of the other online services for maintaining software for development, we use GitLab for our agenda development. This agenda was developed by several people at the same location.
Yeah, it's time
that we don't have to do email endlessly. And I'm worried
to set
that
up
this
your own
is...
GitLab instance. Yep.
Pardon?
It's time to set up your own GitLab instance, like you've done.
We do GitLab on their service at the moment. So we're doing that in full recognition that we don't want to use GitHub because it's owned by Microsoft. Well, Microsoft loves Linux. Remember that. Loves Linux. It even has the Azure Linux in the cloud. And that may or may not be a piece of the death knell of this whole business anyway. Okay, we are actually a bit ahead of schedule. Good news, good news. Hitting the large language model and the general artificial intelligence section. This month, or in the past month, Mozilla of Firefox fame and Thunderbird fame has produced a document that is very long and very large, very complete, talking about what artificial intelligence is. It does not necessarily mean they are pushing for it, but they want you to be able to understand the difference between which model of artificial intelligence or machine language you might want to use for whatever purpose you are doing. This is definitely not for someone who does not wish to know more, but it is for those who want to get a background in what artificial intelligence is all about. Because there are news organizations that are using fake articles. The article actually isn't fake. The article's published, but it was by not a person. They were written by artificial intelligent generated writers, not real people at all. The byline was some Joe Smith or Peter Konstovich or something like that, not really a person, because it was not really an article by a person. So AI not only built the article, it built the author to sound like it was human. And this is the question that comes to my mind as we battle through how these models work and why to use them to enhance your photographs and why we use them to get a better idea of how to program a particular job, or how we use them to generate images for an idea that you have, but you don't have the skill to produce it on your own. Just what are we eliminating? Are we eliminating my voice in favor of somebody else's voice in these meetings? Well, maybe some of you would like that. I don't know. But I'm troubled that there are so many people who are embracing this before, well, maybe they're embracing it at its time, but I don't think we as a society are ready for it. Because I want somebody who is a real person to express their real opinion, as opposed to some fake article generated by a fake author. And that's my take on it. On the other hand, there is this article by an educator named Tom Whitby, who has a blog that I read routinely called My Island View. And he is a much more thoughtful educator than I probably ever was, and is technology oriented in much of his writing. He has been researching the educational potential of generative AI in the form of Chat GPT, the one that's the most famous of the generative AIs. He doesn't have a conclusion yet, but reading his article here, his blog entry, is very instructive. And I recommend that as you think about artificial intelligence and what it is doing and what it's capable of doing, and whether you want your car to be driven by a cloud computer or by your own hands, or maybe you be better get on a train instead. These are issues that are so back and forth at the same time. It's difficult for any one of us to get a handle on it. And I recommend that you make some effort to get a handle on it. Okay, now, I don't think Dennis has a game of the month for us this month. Is that true, Dennis? If you're still with us?
I do not.
All right.
I keep meaning to get one set up, but I just haven't had the time.
I hope you're in.
I will say for AI articles, LinkedIn does them a lot now. They will go over and they will produce an article on some subject and then ask people on LinkedIn to contribute to it.
Oh boy.
The articles are generally meaningless fluff.
Mhm.
And the only real content you get is whatever the other people contribute. So I keep telling them that no, I'm not going to contribute to these, but they keep sending me, hey, we've identified you as someone who should contribute.
Thank you. Thank you for your lack of work. How is your new job going, by the way? It's been a couple of months.
It's been going well. I've been learning a lot of new stuff, and then management went over and said, oh yeah, we're not going to use that anymore. We're going to use this all new stuff.
On the job training? Oh my goodness.
So it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed the new job. So
Good. Okay. In the questions and answers section, something that does not fit at all with our discussions as FOSS, except that electricity runs our computers, and electricity is kind of magic to almost everybody. And it turns out that it is very difficult to demonstrate what electricity looks like in a wire because it moves at near the speed of light. And how do you do that? Well, the fellow named Thomas, no, excuse me, the fellow in the video here, which I'm going to link you to briefly, it's YouTube, so it may not work as something to actually watch while we're sharing in our meeting. It doesn't look like it's going to do well. So I'm leaving it. Watch, hold here. There's one of those ads from Southern Oregon. Alpha Phoenix is the person, the channel name. This video explains electricity better than any other video I have ever seen, and or explanation on paper. If you have the time, this video is almost an hour, I think, in length, 50 minutes or so. It's fascinating. He actually demonstrates using oscilloscope readings how waves of electricity, electrons, seem to move through a copper wire, and shows what really is the basis of all this electronic stuff that we use on a daily basis in a way that's pretty accessible. And I would encourage you to use your ad blockers if you wish, and go to YouTube to watch this video. Okay, leaving that screen briefly. Oh, there he is. That's the guy. All right. Well, it appears that in spite of the fact that this was a long agenda, we moved through it with some speed, and I hope with interesting enough information that you come away wishing to be a participant in our next and subsequent meetings. As we are in the questions and answers section, anybody else have either a question or something else to add before we close up this month's meeting so that we can all re-embrace the holiday season? I have unshared my screen so that I can look at all your faces. It sounds as if, Jill, you have a wave that you're doing? Oh, you're saying
Thank
good.
you. Have
That
a
kind
good
of
month.
multiply.
Okay.
Mhm.
We've all got a lot of links to pay attention to.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
A lot of things to mull over.
Uh-huh. And you are reminded to use the discuss mailing list in order to promote the next meeting's content in case you have something very exciting to add. That's the best place to let us know about it. The board will add appropriate information onto the agenda for next month, which is the second Thursday of January, not the first. So we avoid all the tail end of the new year.
Speaking of which, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to all. I'll see you in January.
So that will be the 11th.
The 11th. Yes. Thank you, Jill. Thank you. Have a good
Bye-bye.
Thursday. Go Pats.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Copy. Paste that. Happy holidays to all and to all a good evening.